The Jewel of the Maldives Part 4. Chapter 12, The Confrontation. Gemma didn't go to the dive dock the next morning. She didn't check the weather, or her tank pressure, or the swell data. She didn't even put on her wetsuit. Instead, she sat on the porch of her bungalow, barefoot, mug of bitter coffee going cold in her hands, waiting for the moment she knew would come. And at 9:42 a.m., it did. Roman Gray, crisp in a white shirt and dark linen trousers, arrived exactly as he always did, silent, confident, not bothering to knock. Just a calm presence crossing her boardwalk like he owned it, because in a way, he did. "Why aren't you prepped?" he asked. Straight to the point. No pleasantries. She didn't stand. Instead, she looked up at him and said, just as flatly, "We need to talk." Roman's eyes narrowed, just slightly. Not anger. Caution. "I'm not in the mood for games," she added. "I wasn't aware we were playing any." Gemma laughed, not loudly. Not for effect. Just one bitter note that slipped out before she could stop it. "You know, you've got a real talent for flipping the table before anyone even sits down." Roman folded his arms. "Is this about the ring? Again?" She stood now. Slowly. Carefully. "No," she said. "It's about the lie wrapped around the ring." His jaw ticked. "Barely." But she caught it. "The fake engagement," she said, stepping closer. "The fake story. The photo with the woman who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. The missing ring that somehow always goes missing with every new instructor you hire." Roman didn't move. His silence was a blade, sharp, clean, waiting for her to blink. "I found your notes, Roman," she said, voice low now. "The ones on the boat. The binder. The other divers. The ones who failed your test. You're not trying to find anything. You're trying to see who stays." He finally looked at her. Something flickered in his eyes. Not rage. Not even denial. Pain. "I gave you a job," he said. "You gave me a trap," she shot back. A gust of wind swept across the porch, tugging at the hem of her tank top. Neither of them moved. "You don't get to talk about trust," she added. "Not when you made me sign a contract to stay here without telling me the full story. Not when you used the ocean as bait." Roman's hands dropped to his sides. "The ring is real," he said quietly. "Of course it's real," she snapped. "So are your notes. So is the locket I found buried in coral with your initials on it, and someone else's name inside. To M." "Who's M, Roman?" He blinked. Slowly. Once. Then his voice came, soft but stripped. "No one." Gemma's mouth opened. Closed. "You hide her locket under 20 feet of coral, and she's no one." "She was, before," he said. "Before all this. Before the noise." Gemma took a step back. Not for distance, for clarity. "Let me guess," she said. "She didn't pass the test either." Roman flinched. And there it was. Just for a second. The break. He ran a hand through his hair, the first visible sign of actual stress since she'd met him. "She left," he said finally. "She saw what came with me and walked away. Or maybe she just didn't want to be studied like a lab rat," Gemma said. "Did that ever occur to you?" He looked away. And for once, he didn't have a response. "Good." Gemma swallowed hard. "You know what hurts the most," she said. "I didn't care about the money. I didn't care about your name, or your villas, or your staff watching me through security cameras. I was just trying to do the job. Roman's voice came like a thread. You still are. She stared at him. No, she said. I was. But then I started to care about you. And that's where I made the mistake. His eyes lifted, not angry now. Just hollow. Raw. I never asked you to, he said. You didn't have to, she replied. People don't open up like that in a storm unless they want to be seen. Another pause. Then, I did want to be seen, he said. But only on your terms, she answered. Only if we passed the test. A silence stretched between them, not awkward. Not empty. But final. The kind of silence where something you didn't know you were holding finally slips from your hands and falls all the way to the floor. Then Roman took one step forward. I'm sorry, he said. 2 words. Small. Cracked. Barely above a whisper. Gemma looked at him. And for the first time, he wasn't the man from the resort brochure. Not the billionaire. Not the recluse. Not the ghost of the ring. He was just a man. And still, it wasn't enough. I can't do this with you, she said. Quiet. Steady. Roman's mouth opened slightly. As if to speak. As if to reach for something else. But she was already walking past him, off the porch, down the steps, into the narrow trail between bungalows. And he didn't follow. Not this time. That night, the island felt different. Not colder. Not louder. Just, emptied. Gemma sat on her bed, dive gear untouched, wetsuit hung on a hook by the door. The locket sat in her palm again. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. She understood now. She was never meant to find the ring. She was meant to find out if she could forgive not finding it. And right now, she couldn't. Chapter 13, The Disappearance. Gemma woke to silence. Not the gentle hush of waves she'd gotten used to. Not the rhythmic chirping of seabirds or the soft rustle of palm leaves through the shutters. A thick, unnatural kind of silence. The kind that made you sit up before your eyes even opened. Her bungalow felt colder than usual. Dimmer. The sky outside was overcast, the color of old pearl. The air had weight to it. She rose slowly, wrapped in one of the linen throws, and walked barefoot to the porch. The dive dock was empty. No tank clinks. No staff prepping boats. And no Roman. She pulled on clothes and headed straight to the dive center. Normally, Roman was already there by 6:30, checking oxygen levels or reviewing his weather app like he didn't trust actual meteorologists. But the locker room was locked. The boat was still tied up, unmoved. And the last log dive was hers. From 2 days ago. The night dive. No activity since. Gemma walked around to the staff side of the island, already feeling that unsettled tension in her chest. She passed 2 maintenance workers, who nodded but didn't speak. A housekeeper she'd exchanged smiles with just 2 days ago avoided her eyes completely. And then she saw Elise. Standing near the guest services office, tablet in hand, coffee in the other, wearing an expression that gave nothing away. Gemma approached slowly. "Where is he?" she asked. Elise didn't look up. "Who?" Gemma stared at her. "Roman." A beat of silence. Then Elise finally lifted her eyes, sharp as ever. "He left." Gemma blinked. "Left where?" "Dubai." Since when? Early this morning. Seaplane off the private dock. No. That's not possible, Gemma said, voice tightening. He doesn't leave without notice. He doesn't, he's never once skipped a dive. He had a change in plans. No. He doesn't change plans, Gemma snapped. Elise tilted her head. You'd be surprised. Gemma's chest tightened. Why didn't he tell me? Elise looked at her with such practiced coolness, it almost passed for concern. Gemma, she said quietly. He doesn't tell anyone. That's the whole point of Roman Grey. Gemma stepped back. It felt like a punch without impact. Like falling into water and not knowing which way was up. He didn't say anything to you, she asked. No message. No note. Elise's mouth flickered, not a smile. Something smaller. A flicker of tiredness, maybe. He doesn't leave notes, she said. He leaves gaps. Gemma walked the island for hours after that. The reef seemed louder. The resort too quiet. The spaces Roman had filled, the villa, the dock, even the dive boat, all felt wrong now, like carefully set stages with no actor left to perform. She went to the dive shack. Nothing. No signs of him. Not even his towel. His gear had been packed away. The man had disappeared. Clean. Without a single trace left behind. Just like he'd planned for this moment all along. Back in her bungalow, she sat with her notebook open, staring at the empty page. She didn't write anything. There was too much to say and nothing she trusted enough to put down. But her eyes kept drifting to the locket. Still on her nightstand. Still unopened. Still heavy. Later, in the outdoor lounge near the bar, she overheard two resort guests murmuring over their cocktails. Did you hear about the guy who left? The one with the private yacht. I thought he owned this place. No, no. He just rents the whole thing every year. Same time. Every time. Odd timing, though. I mean, didn't he bring someone? Apparently not. Gemma turned away before they could see her listening. So that's how it was already spreading. Roman Grey had left. And she was already being rewritten out of the story. That night, she sat by the water. The tide was low, revealing soft tide pools and strange shadows among the rocks. The sky was cloudless now, stars like pinpricks in silk. He was gone. And not just gone. Removed. Every trace of his presence had been wiped with precision. His assistant had seen to it. The staff had helped. And still, something felt unfinished. Not incomplete. Just, paused. Like a breath held too long. Gemma didn't cry. She wasn't heartbroken. She was something stranger. Unsettled. Suspended. And underneath it all, waiting. Because deep down, she couldn't believe he'd really just left. Not without saying anything. Not after all of that. Not after the storm. Not after what passed between them. And that's when it hit her. Maybe she wasn't the one being tested anymore. Maybe he was. Chapter 14, The Message in the Coral. The water was still that morning. Not calm, still. The kind of eerie stillness that comes after a storm, after a confrontation, after someone leaves and forgets to close the door behind them. Gemma stood at the edge of the eastern reef, fins in hand, mask tucked under her arm, watching the sunlight creep across the surface of the sea like slow, pale fire. There was no dive log today. No partner. No schedule. No Roman. She hadn't dived solo since the night she found the locket. But she couldn't stay above water anymore. Not with all the questions piling up in her head. He was gone. That much was fact. But something didn't sit right. Not the way he left. Not the silence he left behind. Roman Gray didn't just vanish. He made exits with intent. And if she knew him even a little, and she was beginning to think she did, then he wouldn't leave without leaving something else behind. The descent was slow. Gentle. She moved past the shallow reef, down to the ledge where the sea dropped into deeper blues. The sun carved silver pathways through the water, scattering tiny fish and illuminating the coral shelf in soft, golden stripes. She wasn't looking for the ring anymore. Not really. That part of the story had dissolved the moment he walked away. What she was looking for now was something she couldn't name. And maybe that's why she found it. She passed the small overhang where she'd dropped the ring. Drifted lower. Beneath the lip of the reef, where the sand turned darker and the coral grew denser. Something caught her eye, not a sparkle. Not metal. Shape. Deliberate. Out of place. Gemma angled her dive light downward. A narrow crevice in the rock. Almost invisible from above. A tight slot in the coral that no fish would tuck into, no current would have reached. And wedged inside, glinting softly in the light, a narrow glass tube. About the size of a fountain pen. Sealed with a rubber cap. No coral had grown around it. No algae. It hadn't been here long. She hovered, heart pounding. It took 2 careful movements to dislodge it. She turned it slowly in her fingers. Inside the tube, rolled and protected against the water, was a strip of thick white paper. Handwritten. Ink, not pencil. Black. Crisp. And visible through the glass, in sharp, unshakable Roman handwriting. If you find this, you found me. Gemma stared at it, suspended in place. Everything inside her stilled. The message didn't make sense in any logical way, not at first. But emotionally. It hit like a depth charge. He had left something behind. Something meant for her. And he had buried it deep. She surfaced slowly, the current tugging at her legs as she ascended. Not fast. Not with urgency. With certainty. On land, she cracked the seal of the tube with damp hands. The paper slid out in a perfect curl. No smudging. Roman's handwriting filled one side in clean, angled script. Gemma. If you've found this, you kept diving. You didn't stop looking. I didn't expect that. I hoped. But I didn't expect. There's no ring. There never was, not the way I said. It's real, yes. But it was never for anyone. Not the way people assume. I told myself I'd know what kind of person someone was by what they did after they dropped it. I was wrong. What mattered wasn't the ring. It was the dive. You stayed. You saw me. You called me out. And you're still here. If that means anything to you, anything at all. Come back to the water. Ah. Gemma lowered the paper slowly. She couldn't breathe. Not from pain. Not from shock. From clarity. He hadn't left because of the confrontation. He'd left because he needed to know what she would do if he did. And she had passed a test he didn't even know how to give out loud. She sat at the edge of the dive dock for a long time after that, The letter curled in her lap, the tide washing softly beneath her. Somewhere between anger and affection, between betrayal and forgiveness, she started to understand what Roman Gray had actually been looking for. Not obedience. Not loyalty. Recognition. Not someone who saw the money. Someone who saw him. That evening, as the sun dropped behind the horizon and the water turned gold, Gemma walked the length of the reef alone. No gear. No expectations. Just the echo of his voice on the page. And the flicker of something fragile but alive in her chest. Hope. Chapter 15, The Return. The island had settled into its usual rhythm by the next evening, gentle waves brushing against the stilts of the bungalows, soft jazz humming from the beach bar, and guests returning to their sun-kissed, cocktail-slow version of paradise. But for Gemma, something had shifted permanently. The dive that morning had been different. Not because of where she went, same reef, same depths, but because of why she'd gone. For the first time in days, she hadn't been searching for the ring. Or the truth. Or even Roman. She'd gone to dive. For herself. To feel weightless. To feel steady. To stop asking and start feeling again. And it had worked. Almost. By sunset, she was back at her bungalow, still salty from the ocean, wrapped in a robe and sipping cold mint tea with her feet propped on the rail. The sky was pulling down its curtain of color, deep purple smeared with tangerine and gold, and the sea shimmered like it knew the performance was almost over. That's when she saw him. At first, it was just a shape. A silhouette walking slowly down the beach, barefoot, sleeves rolled up, hands in his pockets. She didn't move. Not right away. Her heart lifted and dropped at the same time. It wasn't until he stepped into the golden spill of light beneath the palm trees that she could really see his face. Roman. Not dressed for dinner. Not for business. Just himself. Hair messier than usual. No watch on his wrist. No phone in sight. He looked like someone returning from something he couldn't name. She stood, still holding her mug, unsure if she should go to him or wait. She didn't have to decide. He walked to the edge of her boardwalk. Stopped. And waited. Gemma met his eyes across the distance. He didn't smile. Didn't gesture. He just looked at her. The same way he had under the stormlight. The same way he had in the hidden lagoon. Like she was something he wasn't entirely sure he deserved to see again. She stepped down to meet him. The sand was warm beneath her feet, and the air smelled like rain and salt and something sweeter, maybe jasmine. Maybe memory. When she reached him, she didn't speak. Neither did he. Not at first. He looked at her the way people look at photographs they've memorized and still can't quite believe are real. I didn't leave the island, he said softly. Her breath caught, but she didn't show it. He looked away for a second, toward the water. I stayed on one of the old staff bungalows near the west shore. No Wi-Fi. No phone. I needed space. Time. And I needed to know if you'd keep going. Gemma folded her arms. You could have just asked. I didn't know how, he said. And for once, that didn't sound like an excuse. He looked back at her. I've spent years building walls I don't even remember putting up. They're comfortable. They protect everything. But they also keep everything out. You built this whole place to be a fortress, she said. He nodded. And then I invited people into it just to prove they wouldn't stay. That's a hell of a test. He swallowed. You were the first person who called me out, and didn't leave. Gemma exhaled slowly. I almost did. I know. They stood there in the dimming light, the sky darkening above them. He reached into his pocket, then paused. Changed his mind. Left it there. You found the message, he said. I did. His jaw tightened. I meant it. She studied his face for a long moment. You could have told me the truth from the start, she said. I was afraid if I did, you'd stop seeing me and start seeing what I was worth. She tilted her head. You mean, the money? He nodded. Well, congratulations, she said. You successfully made me think you were emotionally unavailable and manipulative. His eyebrows rose. But then, slowly, a smile broke through. Just a little. Just enough to pull at the corner of his mouth. I deserved that, he said. She didn't smile back. But she didn't turn away either. I still don't know if I trust you, she said. I don't expect you to, he replied. Not yet. That surprised her. But it also softened something in her chest. Roman Gray wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was asking for the chance to earn it. And that, maybe, was what made her believe him. Finally, she asked, what now? Roman took a breath, like he'd been waiting days to answer that. I want to start over, he said. Not from the beginning. From here. Where it's honest. Gemma looked down at the sand between them. Then stepped forward, just enough that her fingers brushed his. I'm not diving tomorrow, she said. His eyes searched hers. No. No, she said. Tomorrow, you're going to show me where you've been hiding all this time. And maybe, just maybe, I'll stop being mad at you. Roman gave a slow nod. Not dramatic. Not smug. Just grateful. And this time, when they turned back toward the bungalow, together, neither of them led. They walked side by side. And for once, there was no one watching. Not Elise. Not the staff. Not the cameras. Just the stars. And the sea. And two people learning, quietly, how to come back from a goodbye.
Thanks for listening to Billionaire Romance Stories, where love meets luxury in the most unexpected places. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. We love hearing your favorite twists and favorite theories. And don't forget to ring that bell, because in this world of yachts, secrets, and luxurious romance, the next story is always one click away.